Hey guys, so I'm joined here today with a very special guest. This is Joel Zaslofsky. Now, Joel is the creator of The Value of Simple, and he's got a great podcast called Smart and Simple Matters Podcast. And Joel's also a longtime puttypeep. He's been in the tribe since almost the very beginning. And full disclosure, Joel is currently our billing support magician wizard.
True story.
And Joel just recently came out with a great book called Experience Curating. And we're going to talk about that today. So Joel, welcome. Thank you so much for being here, for being with us.
Cool. It's fun to be with you and the rest of the Putty Peep. I'm excited to chat.
Awesome. All right. So I actually want to start this off by asking you the question that you ask everyone on your podcast. So I'd like you to tell me what makes you you. You know, what do you call it? The seeds of awesome? Is that it?
I do. The seeds of awesomeness. You want to know my seeds of awesomeness?
Yes.
Oh boy.
When were they planted? And
well, so something foundational about me. I grew up just about 20 minutes away from where I am right now. I'm in a suburb of Minneapolis, Minnesota, in Edina. I grew up across the Mississippi River in St. Paul and had a very comfortable lifestyle, middle class, traditional. I've got an older brother who's about 2 years older than me. And one of the things to know when it comes to my brother, Aaron, I just followed in his footsteps. Pretty much everything that I did, from Little League teams to the college that I attended, the University of Wisconsin in Madison, I just pretty much did what Aaron did. And I love my brother. He's awesome. But one of the things that got me into a lot of trouble, and one of the things that used to define me, was conformity and just blindly following what was expected of me. So I contrast that with now, about 4 years ago, I tell people about my personal renaissance, not to be confused with the Renaissance business or anything else, but the Renaissance is good. And
like
now, yes, we do like that term. Now everything is completely different. Now I'm incredibly intentional about what it is that I do, what kind of relationships that I enter into or cultivate, and just my general environment. So I guess the seeds of awesomeness weren't necessarily planted in my youth. The seeds of awesomeness, although I appreciate everything that happened then, are more recent, and they're as of just a few years ago.
Wow, that's interesting. So what is curating, and how did you become interested in it? Because I think that what you were just talking about might tie into this.
Yeah, well, curating in the broadest sense has a ton of different definitions, like a lot of different terms. Some people think about it in terms of a marketing strategy, like content curation. People who are watching us might be familiar with that. Other people might think of it as a curator of a museum, of an art gallery, the person who's responsible for picking 5 artifacts to display in the special exhibit out of the 500 that are in back. That takes some significant skill so that you can understand what to present, what the context of it is versus everything else that's in there. The flavor of curating that I practice isn't super different than what the ancient Romans started doing about 2,000 years ago, when they hired curators to help manage and archive and collect artifacts and present them to the people. I don't know how much you want me to get into the what of experience curating, but it's a funky topic. We should probably talk about it a little.
Sounds a little hard to define, which I can relate to as someone who runs a site about a group of people that aren't an actual. Multipotentialite isn't an actual word, and you have to explain. But I gather it involves spreadsheets.
It can. It certainly can. It doesn't have to.
Okay.
I don't want to scare anybody away who's like, oh, Excel. Is this guy seriously going to talk about Excel? Yes, I am, first of all. Second of all, no. You can use Evernote. You can use commonplace books. The how-to, the tools that you use to curate your existence, or experience curating, as I call it, totally up to you. They can be physical. They can be digital. They can be general purpose, like Evernote or Excel. They can be specific, like Library Thing or Pinterest or a journal, a Moleskine that's really special to you. You can kind of do whatever you want. So taking it back to what experience curating is, there's 3 parts to it. So the first part is building a mindset that you can curate anything. Like literally anything. This conversation that we're having, the two of us, hopefully there are people, preferably in spreadsheets, who are taking a little snippet of something that they liked, that you or I said that really resonated with them, then maybe they want to include that as the chapter opener for a future book that they have coming up. Conversations, recipes, books, videos, anything can be curated. So that's the first part. The second part is process related. Well, how do you do that? I have what I call the FOCUS framework. It's a 6-step process. FOCUS is an acronym for filter, archive, organize, contextualize, access, and share. And that shows you how you can create something meaningful, something valuable from any experience. And then the last part is the tools, because everything is just theory until you actually have the tools to put it into practice. So there's really 3 components to it.
Gotcha. And what are some of the benefits? I mean, you talk in your book about your leaky brain and how you felt like life was kind of slipping away from you and you couldn't remember things. Has that changed since you've gotten into curating your experience?
My brain is not any better, but the benefit is that I no longer have to rely on it nearly as much. Because I have my most meaningful moments in, not necessarily in spreadsheets. I mean, I'm better about picture taking and organizing too. Like I said, you can curate anything, but a lot of the things that were really important to me, a restaurant that I went to on my best friend's birthday and what we ate, I had no idea. Sometimes I couldn't even remember what day that was. So I've had so many awkward, embarrassing, sometimes humiliating experiences because my brain is just total Swiss cheese up here. And by creating an external system, an extension of the human brain in my curating tools, I no longer have to rely on it to know when was the last time that I tried a specific recipe with my wife, Melinda. Did we like it? Did we want to add more of this or less of that? Is it something that would be appropriate for my son, Grant, who's 3 years old? Did he like it? All these things are columns in a spreadsheet that I can sort and filter on, which helps a ton with my memory. Other people do it because they want to simplify, which is a big reason for me. And I won't get into that a ton, but self-expression is a big part of it too, to showcase to the world who you are, what makes you tick, what's important to you. To help with the overwhelming amount of information that's just fired at us from the internet or from ads or from other places, filtering that into a trickle that you can actually do something with. There's a lot of different benefits of experience curating.
What are some benefits, or what are some things that you think might really resonate with multi-potentialites? Because we're people with a lot of interests, a lot of stuff on the go. How can curating our experience help us?
Yeah, well, first of all, experience curating, I didn't design it to be perfect for multi-potentialites, but it kind of is. So yeah, you're right. We have a tendency to intensely focus on one thing or go to another thing and just kind of bounce back and forth. So let's say the thing that you love, music. You are super into making EPs right now. And I'm using you as an example, Emilie. That's really important to you right now. You may have resources, whether it's a blog post that you read, whether it's a specific person that you've talked to and something meaningful that they said. Now, you might get away from music, and you might not come back to it for 5 years. Well, what if you had all of your awesome resources for the musical aspect of you that you kind of bounce back and forth from available whenever you need them, however you need them? I use spreadsheets, but people can use other different things. How useful would that be to not have to rely on your memory? If you love so many different topics, there's also a whole bunch of different mediums. Is it text-based? Is it audio? Is it video? Is it infographic? I mean, there's all these different kinds of mediums. So if you're constantly switching between topics and mediums and passions, well, wouldn't it be awesome to have a single place, a resource that you can sort and filter and organize and preserve the context and add additional layers for all of the different types of experiences that you have all in one place? That's especially valuable for multi-potentialite.
Yeah,
and you can have that.
Do you actually have, you don't just have one spreadsheet. There are like multiple spreadsheets for different.
Yes, I do not have a single master spreadsheet for my entire life.
Crazy.
I have one for what I call online content. So if it's a blog post on puttylike.com, if it's an awesome conversation in the Putty Tribe that I want to take a certain snippet and I want to make sure that I'm capturing that. If it's a podcast, a YouTube video, like I said, an infographic, I'll have a spreadsheet for all of that stuff where I'll have columns, what I call experience elements, the who, what, when, where, why, and how of an experience. All these components that make up a cool narrative for a full experience. I'll have columns in a spreadsheet for each of them. so that I can reorganize them, so that I can drill down on a specific type or a subcategory of things. And that's really the really cool thing is you have your broad topics, simplicity, personal finance, multi-potentialism, all these different things. But underneath them, there's hundreds of these tiny little subcategories or mini categories. And if you can slice and dice on those subcategories and mini categories, it's really valuable to you, and it also makes you a huge asset to the people around you.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So I had an experience yesterday that you probably would have hated. You probably would have fired my CPA. But this is so I've got this new CPA, and I went in to do my taxes with him. And I had like all of my expenses in like an Excel file, which is probably not the best way. I know it's not the best way of doing things, but you know, it was Excel, so you got to give me some credit, right?
Yeah.
At least it wasn't like a shoebox. I was like, you know, I tried printing these out, but it looked like a mess. So I gave him like a USB key, and I was like, here's the Excel file with the different tabs, and you know, for the different categories and stuff, and he had his assistant print them all out there, and then he like did it manually on paper, and he like took the ruler out and he drew a thing, and he like added stuff up, and he was just like not into using the spreadsheet at all. So I'm curious how you feel about like the digital tools versus like the analog way of doing things, because I know that some people do like kind of, you know, touching their moleskin notebook and having their you talk about Ryan Holiday and his approach, so what's your take on that?
Yeah, well, you mentioned Ryan Holiday, who wrote an awesome article on Thought Catalog called How and Why to Keep a Commonplace Book. And the Commonplace book is basically a physical equivalent of what I use for Excel. It's intended to capture wisdom, things that you can use that are actionable for the future, for your job, for your relationships, for your time management, whatever it may be, in the good times and the bad times. Ryan recommends a commonplace book, which is a physical book where you keep the things that you curate. That's awesome. There's all these important historical figures that have done that, and there is a time and a place for a pen and paper, because I know a lot of people love that textual feel, that they can see it, they can feel it, they can flip through the pages, but I don't really recommend it, especially if you're going to curate a lot of different topics and in a lot of different mediums. It's inefficient for the most part. Most people don't journal or have a moleskin for the efficiency. I know that they do it for different reasons, but a lot of the things that you can benefit from when you curate your existence, you can't have in a physical piece of paper. It's more susceptible to being damaged. I mean, it's not just me who needs to worry about a 3-year-old kid who has we just bought him a pair of scissors, which is probably a bad idea. And he's already started to cut things up. He might spill his milk on my stuff. I digress, but I have very strong recommendations for people, depending on what it is that they curate, that they do it digitally. Again, the tools, not necessarily important, but being able to have what I refer to as the everywhere doctrine. There's 2 principles. Take your experiences with you wherever there's electricity and be able to have them in multiple places. The ability to have those 2 things and have all of your best experiences with you wherever you go, on your smartphone, on your laptop, on whatever kind of device that you have, is amazing. And you really can't achieve that with a bunch of journals.
Fair enough. So do you, I know we don't have a ton of time, but do you want to quickly walk us through your focus method? Maybe even just, you know, tell us what each letter stands for. And
yeah. Okay, so focus, F-A-O-C-A-S. So the first part is filter. And this is, experience curating is a very descriptive paradigm. I'm never going to prescribe to somebody, with a couple of exceptions, like you have to do this. I'm just trying to describe a framework so that people can customize it in cool ways for them. So the filter part is incredibly subjective. Some people try to apply a formula or a checklist. Like if it meets XYZ criteria, it goes through my filter and it goes into my archive, whether that's Excel or Evernote or a journal, whatever it may happen to be. For me, it's just a gut feeling. You use your humans. Yeah.
Sorry, no, finish your sentence and then I'll jump in.
Oh, you use your human subjectivity to determine what has meaning and to who and in what context.
Yeah. I was going to say, I really appreciated your Stephen Chbosky quote in there. It was, don't be a sponge, be a filter.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Perks of Being a Wallflower, so I enjoyed seeing that in there.
Nice. Yeah, the other quote that starts that chapter about how a man without a filter is just chaos walking. I love both of those quotes, and I
Yeah.
couldn't pick between the two of them. So I'm like, all right, I'll just start the chapter
Yeah, they're
with
both
both
short.
quotes that are in there too.
And I know you use curating extensively for quotes, right? You mentioned that a few times in your book.
Yes, I do. I have a separate spreadsheet just for quotes.
I think I might start doing that because I'm often like, oh, I need like a good quote here, and it would be really nice to have something I could just go back and look at.
Yeah, and not just for your work, but for inspiration too. If you're having some kind of existential crisis and you need something to help you with the food that you're eating or with a bad relationship and you need some place to turn, a quotes curated archive is a great place to have it. And that kind of leads into the second part. So the first A of focus is archive. I use Excel. People can use other things, but you got to have a place where you can store all of the things that you've filtered and you've determined this is meaningful. This is valuable for me or for somebody else. So that's the second part. The third part is organizing. I tend to organize in a different way than a lot of people do with digital stuff. I don't use folders. I don't use color coding. I think in terms of categories, which are the primary building blocks of organization. Is it this or that? And then you kind of go from there. Labels. How do you apply certain labels? And you and I know we both have a complicated relationship with labels and when to apply them. But using labels so that you can be very literal and know what experience falls into a certain label category, the relationships between all these different things. So that's the organized part. We doing good? Should I keep going?
Yeah, we're good. Keep going.
All right. The fourth part is huge. And a lot of people skip this part. It's contextualize. And it doesn't really do you any good if you're awesome at filtering and archiving and organizing. If you're not capturing the original context of an experience, you might as well not even bother. Because that is so important. Your brain's not going to do it. Even people who think they have really good memories, they don't. And there's an awesome TED Talk that I linked to in the book and some research from Northwestern University that proves our memories start messing with us almost immediately after we have an experience. So capture that original context so that you know what it is and then layer up on top of that context, your own personal spin, what you found meaningful of it, how you might share it with what audience and in what way. And then the fifth part is access. A tool is only as good as your ability to access it. So if you can't access your experiences, what good is it? Which is another reason why I like them to be digital. And then the sixth part, which is the longest part, is about sharing. That includes attribution, making sure that you're giving credit where credit is due, or the hat tip, as we call in curator speak, and making sure, for me, the biggest challenge was moving from a click here, I'm awesome perspective, which is what I used to do on social media, just broadcasting like, hey, look, everybody, I did something. I'm awesome. Click here. And now it's about how can I highlight not just what I do, but what other people do and make sure that what I'm sharing is meaningful to as wide a variety of people as possible.
So are you a Buffer guy? I'm just curious if you...
I like Hootsuite.
Yeah, I use Hootsuite too. A lot of people are getting into Buffer though. I've been looking into it.
I think it's 6 of one, half a dozen of another from what I've heard. But Hootsuite's good enough that I'd stick with it.
Yeah, cool. Okay. So I wanted to ask you, you gave me some tips for someone who's interested in music. I'm currently wearing my my author's hat. My musician's hat is on the shelf right now. How can I use, how can I curate my experience, or how can this whole process help me, specifically in the context of writing a book?
Yeah, this is awesome actually, because I have something I call the Digital Launch Playbook, which is a spreadsheet that I've used for projects that I've started. And I have there's a generic one for digital projects, and then I created one for self-publishing. I don't know whether you're going to self-publish or not, but as I went through the process, as I was doing my research, as I was talking to people about it, I was mapping out, here are all the things that I need to do to launch my book properly. When it comes to digital format conversion or the editing process, or even before you get to any of it, the idea creation, I'm capturing all of these different resources, little chunks here and there from this website, from that podcast, and I'm putting it all into a curated spreadsheet so that when it comes time for me to do something that I know I'm going to be doing, that's almost a year-long process, all I need to do is go back to and refer to the great stuff that I've already experienced. I have it all categorized and subcategorized and tagged with keyword-rich terms that I can search on that are meaningful to me. I've got best practices that are associated with each of these tasks. So I've taken for each big project, like the event that there's a simplicity event called Simple Rev that I'm having here in the Twin Cities in October. I have a spreadsheet, a curated spreadsheet about creating your own event.
Yeah.
So each big project, as you're getting into it, if you know you're going to, you can start ahead of time, and then by the time it comes time to execute, you've got this curated stash that you can just go, tick it off.
Yeah, and you can also kind of modify things as you go through the experience yourself, I would imagine.
Bingo.
And then you've got like the meta perspective where you could, teach someone else how to do what you just did.
Yeah, and that's the important thing. I mean, I really benefit from curating, but more than my personal benefit, it's to help other people. A lot of folks don't realize, but when someone sends me an email and they're like, hey, I'm struggling with this, all I got to do is go to my curated spreadsheet and find a relevant link to an article that's going to help them. I certainly don't know the answer, but if I can be a resource to other people and a go-to person, and I can send them down the right path. So I don't just curate things that are relevant to me. I curate things that are relevant to my friends and family, knowing that they will come to me for them, and I want to be ready for that.
Yeah, you're a connector. You're, giving people resources. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So why don't you? You're a big multi-potentialite like the rest of us. What other projects do you have on your plate right now? You mentioned your conference. What else is going on?
It's really that.
Okay.
Experience Curating, the book, is coming out. I'm not sure when this will be published, but I would imagine my book has already publicly been put out there on February 18th. There's that. And of course, all the marketing that goes along with it. The marketing of a book. Goodness gracious.
At least you've got the processes all there in front of you.
Oh, yeah, but the execution, that's the tough part.
Execution, right.
I've been told I need to market my book, so I'm going to be doing that.
Good.
And then the big thing in 2014 is this simplicity event called Simple Rev. The Rev stands for Revive, Revolutionize, and Rev Up like a motor.
Cool.
I want to create a live, in-person, workshop-heavy environment for 2 days for people in the simplicity community to rally around. There's no event where the simplicity, whether you're into minimalism or simple parenting or eating or tiny houses, living off the grid, mindfulness and meditation. I mean, there's so many different components of the simplicity, and I want people to be able to go somewhere where we can celebrate simple living in all of its various forms, where people can start projects and collaborate and go back to their communities and have something that they can get buy-in and continue to build momentum on. So the big thing for 2014 is Simple Rev, and that's at simplerev.com, REV.com.
Cool. And, as all multi-potentialites, I'm sure you get distracted by random things. What do you do when, you've got this big project, and what do you do when a random interest comes up and you're like, oh, that sounds really cool. Do you, file it away for later? Or?
I'm not as good about that as a lot of people are. So, for example, I suck at typing, and I'm going to get better. I was just talking to some friends yesterday about the fact that I want to learn how to type legitimately well. It's kind of ridiculous that I wrote a 35,000 word book and I type slow and painfully, right. But I did.
I mean, that's inspiring.
Yeah, and I don't want to have to do that again. We spend so much time typing emails or whatever it is, but I never learned how to do it properly. So this is a project that's important to me that kind of sits on top of all the other ones. I've carved out 15 minutes in March every night from 8:15 to 8:30 where I'm going to work on that. Cool. I figured I can squeeze 15 minutes in there, and then maybe by April I'll be decent. Who knows? So some I shelve, but some I just figure out, can I break this into tiny little chunks, and can I just repeat it over the course of time until I'm done with it? You can write a book in 15-minute increments. Apparently, you can learn to type in 15-minute increments.
That's awesome. Yeah, I use that approach a lot, too. It depends on the kind of interest. Some things fit that format better than others. But I have a friend who was learning Japanese 15 minutes a day. So what about you? Besides, when you have something new that comes up, I know that you've tried to do some quick either Pomodoros or 15 minutes for writing your book. Are there other things that you shelve, but certain things that you weren't planning to, but that you incorporate just because you can kind of work them in that way? Well, for big projects or like big areas of interest, I'll often kind of put those on the back burner list. And sometimes I'll like set a timer and give myself like, half an hour or something to like explore something. Or like, if I got a lot of work done that day, I might reward myself by like diving down the rabbit hole and just, tinkering with something new. But yeah, it kind of depends on the interest. Other times I'll like carve out a specific time frame, like either, the daily 15 minutes or like I did last year with the month devoted to writing and recording an album. Because some projects like are much better suited to that sort of thing where you just take a chunk of time, like a month, and you just dive in and you just go for it. It's kind of the NaNoWriMo approach. So yeah, it depends. It depends. But I definitely always have like a sense of what my core projects are right now, like what my major priorities are. And sometimes I don't do this so much anymore because I don't feel like I have to. But in the past, I used to like stick them on my wall, like literally just, if I was ever like, okay, I need to buckle down and do some work, I would look up and I'd be like, okay, those are my 3 projects. Which one out of those 3 priority projects do I want to work on right now?
Yeah, that's a cool way to do it.
Yeah.
I dig it.
Yeah, cool. So where can people find you? Where can people learn more about everything that you're up to?
Well, valueofsimple.com is my hub. That's where I blog. That's where my podcast, Smart and Simple Matters, is through. If people want to find me on social media, they can hang out there. If this whole experience curating dealio sounds good, spreadsheets or no spreadsheets. And seriously, I'm not going to make you use Excel. They can go to valueofsimple.com/ECB, Echo Charlie Bravo, to find a lot more about experience curating. And then if the whole simplicity thing sounds really good to people, maybe they can't attend, and that's cool. I'm not expecting a lot of folks to, but if they want to support it, they want to be a part of it before, during, and after, we'd really love to engage a greater community. Go to simplerev.com and check it out. Sign up for the email list and make sure that if you want to be engaged, you can be engaged. There's a ton of different ways to get involved other than attending.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing with the Putty Like community and for everything that you do in the multi-potentialite space.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been awesome.